initiate the project. This is how we get a project going. This is how we begin a project. We're going to explore the steps required to start a project. We're going to explain some different requirements, requirements for the product that we're produce as part of our project, and the requirements for management of the project. We're going to explore methods to determine requirements. We're going to understand a model called SMART, or the SMART model, and we'll discuss the value and content of a project charter. There are 5 components to this. The first one is steps to start a project. There's sort of a process of how a project actually gets going. Sometimes it's formal, sometimes it's informal, but it kind of follows this sort of guideline that I'm going to present here. One is somebody has an idea or a need, and then what they do is they go through and there's an evaluation, a preliminary evaluation to see, is it a project or is it operations? If it's operations, then it goes and becomes an operational task and either gets assigned for somebody to do or goes into the garbage can and we forget all about it. If it's a project, then somebody usually takes that project, sort of requirements of what the project is about, return on investment, maybe a business case, and takes it to some sort of control committee, which then looks at that and evaluates that along with all the other submissions for projects and comes up with a prioritized list. If it's fortunate enough, it becomes a project initiative, and that's how a project gets going. Now, normally from the idea or need, but there's one more method of how a project gets going. That really is a mandated task, where sometimes organizations are mandated by governments to perform things, and usually that doesn't follow the process. That basically goes straight over and becomes a project and goes from there. Now, the other side of this, if the project is not approved, then it basically gets scrapped and it goes back over to the garbage can. But the garbage can is usually a recycle bin, and be prepared for people to take that project that was not approved and recycle it into something for the next cycle. And that's basically how a project gets going. Now that we know how a project gets going, let's look at some different requirements of that particular project. There are 2 different requirements. One is the requirements for the product that we're going to produce as part of our project, and there's the requirements for the management of the project itself. I like to look at the requirements, both from the product standpoint and from the project standpoint, as a book that has basically 2 chapters. One is the chapter of to create, of what things we need in order to create the actual product that we're working on for our project. That's one chapter. And I look at the other side is the things that are required for us to manage that production of that product. We call that the management of the project itself. So those are 2 different requirements. We're going to explore each one of those in a little bit more detail. So looking at this in a little bit more detail, we can see on the left-hand side we have the things that are required for us to manage the project itself. Things like assumptions, milestones, risks, external dependencies, the project charter, the stakeholder plan, risk plan, communication plan, work breakdown structure. Those are things that are relevant to tools and techniques that we use to help us manage the actual project. Whereas the other side, when we look at the product, we look at something that has more dimension or color or weight. It's usually a tangible, sometimes an intangible thing, but a tangible thing, something that we can actually measure. We call that deliverable. So those are the 2 requirements. We look at what's required for us to run the project and what's required for us to actually create the product, which is what the project is all about. I like to have this little diagram here, is what I call the steps to success of running a project. And the very first step in this stairway to running the project is the product requirements. Without the product requirements, you don't have a clue of what it is the project is actually going to produce. So product requirements become very crucial for you to understand and for you to deliver what is expected of you as part of the project. So when we talk about the requirements of the product we're actually going to deliver, there are 2 major almost competing forces that have a different view of what those requirements actually are. One is the customer, and that customer, we define a customer as the individual who commissioned us to actually produce the actual product of the project for. And let me give you an example of this. Let's say, for example, we're doing a payroll system. So the customer for this would be the head of payroll or the department head of payroll, which has said, I want a new payroll system. Whereas the user would be the individuals that actually are going to be using the new payroll system. They often have different requirements. One could be simply from the customer standpoint, they say, I want a new payroll system, get it in. From a user standpoint, they're looking at it, how's this going to make my job better? What's in it for me for this particular thing? So often they're in a tug-of-war of what the requirements is. You, as the project manager, are caught in that tug-of-war. And what you need to do, really, is you need to get an agreement from both of them. You need to have a common ground from which the customer and the user agree of what those requirements are going to be. If you don't get that agreement, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually produce the product and run the project in a way that meets both of their needs, because they'll be at opposite ends or opposing ends of what they actually expect the project will deliver. So it's very important to understand that there is these two areas, the customer and the user, and it's your job to basically get them to agree so that you can deliver something that's of value to both of them. Now, interesting enough is that product requirements have a very funny way of being presented. In original cases, when they start off in a business case, the dollars to produce the product requirements are usually small. They're within a range. They're within that range or acceptable range so that management will approve it. But as the project starts to unfold, it almost doubles and sometimes triples the amount of money for that as the project starts to unfold. As the project starts to go, people want more and more things. And then ultimately it can get exponentially way more expensive. There's a really good reason for this, and a really good reason for this is simply this, is that the more people know, the more they want. So the more that the project starts to roll and talk about what it is that you're actually going to produce, the more that people can think about things, and the more that they understand of it, the more they actually want. And the more they want, the more it costs. And so this is a very common thing for a project manager to experience, even after they set the budget, as they start to roll it out and start to get people involved in what this product is all about and what the project is going to deliver, the cost can go up. So be prepared for that. So before we go rushing in and start to get things going, we want to make sure that we keep this triangle in mind. You know, what scope, what time, what cost. When we look at our product requirements, we want to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of money and appropriate amount of time to deliver the things that the product requirement says it should be. The thing we want to make sure is that the customer users accept it, that they agree to what it's going to be, that we're going to do this so many things, it's going to take so long, going to cost so much, and make sure you as the project manager have the resources, have the time, have the cost in order for you to meet the expectations of the customers. That way you can guarantee you're going to have a successful project. As mentioned earlier, it's not always up to the project manager to actually determine what the product requirements are. Usually that's some sort of business analyst or some sort of product specialist that does that. But there are some methods and some things that we should understand as project managers of how you go about getting requirements, just in case we have to refine the requirements that are already produced for us. So some items that we use, some methods that we use in order to gather requirements from a product standpoint or interviews. We go and interview the various stakeholders and find out what their actual needs are. The other way that we can do that, we can get expert judgment. We can get some experts in various subject matters and ask them what requirements are mandatory, what requirements are nice to have, what requirements are needed to have in order to make this particular product useful. We can do strength, weakness, and opportunity threat analysis and gather requirements from there. We can do walkthroughs. Now, walkthroughs are very powerful things. You can actually walk through and see how people are actually using the current product, the product that you're probably going to replace, and see how they use it today. You can do brainstorming where you just ask everybody about ideas. They put the ideas up of what requirements are needed in order for the product to be of value. You can do mind mapping, which is kind of structured brainstorming, and lead them down to a path. You can actually use focus groups, and many organizations do this. When they want to bring out a new product, they'll bring in a demographic and get those individuals to try a product, look at a product, taste it, smell it, feel it, enjoy it, and then give their feedback from there. Other thing you can do is you can do a gap analysis. Traditionally is you need to know where you're going and you need to know where you are, and then you say, what does it take for us to get there? So what you do today, and you know what you require in the future. And so what you do is you say, what things do we need to do in order to get to the new future? The other very effective way is to do a demonstration, do a prototype of this thing. So build whatever it is, and let people experience it, and so they can play with it, they can touch it, they can feel it, they can smell it, and they can analyze it. And that's a very effective way to gather it. But one thing that you have to be cognizant of is that when we talk about requirements, there's a need. Is what do people actually need? And need is sort of like your basic needs. What do you basically need in order to use this product and get value out of it? And then what we have is we have what's required. What is absolutely required for us in order for it to function very, very smoothly? And then we have our wants. What do we really want out of this? And then ultimately we have our desires. And what is the desire? These are the really nice things you could have. Now let me give you an example of this. I work 37 miles or 37 kilometers away from where I live. So I need transportation. I need to get to where I want to go. So I need that. Right? So basically I can need that. I can take a bus or I can buy a car. Let's say I really need a car because the bus doesn't meet my schedules. So I really need a car. Now what do I require? Well, I need a basic car that gets me from point A to point B. What do I really want? Ooh, I want a brand new car so it never breaks down. What's my desire? I think I want one of those fancy, dancy sports cars. Now you can see as I go through there that my desire is a lot more expensive than my actual need. So make sure when you do requirement gatherings, what are you aiming for? What are the requirements? Are they a need? Are they required? Are they a want? Or are they a desire? That's the key to making sure that you manage the expectations of all your stakeholders. The next thing we're going to explore is the SMART model, the SMART model. Creating well-defined requirements. Now this model was created by Peter Drucker in 1954, so it has survived the test of time. The SMART model basically means this. The S stands for specific. Be precise when you do a requirement. Make sure you're very specific, you're very precise of what it is that you're defining as a requirement. Make it measurable. Use values, use numbers, use things that we can actually measure to prove that it is within that tolerance. Agreed to by your customers and users. Make sure that your customers and users and all stakeholders agree that this is the actual requirement. And make it realistic. Can it be done? Not can it be done anywhere in the world, but can it be done with the resources and with the capabilities that we have within our organization? And last but not least, time. Set deadlines. It has to be done by a certain period of time. Now let me give you an example of what I mean by a SMART requirement. Let's say, for example, I'm making a new computer system. And basically, the definition of the new computer system, one of the requirements of it, it must be user-friendly. Now, that is a very standard statement in many computer systems out there, software systems today. But basically, it's what I call a fuzzy system. It means absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, its only intention is to make sure it means nothing, and then nobody can be held accountable to this fuzzy statement. User-friendly. So let's run the smart model by this particular thing. Let's see, can we make it more specific? Okay, let's say, for example, we wanted to, when we talk about user-friendly, more specific that it must have a voice-activated interface. The response time for the voice-active interface must be 0.001 seconds. And it must be completed, the whole act must understand 14 different languages. So now we have a more qualifier of what user-friendly means. And basically said what the user-friendly, that this system must be voice activated, it must understand 14 different languages, and it must have a response time of 0.001. Though that's much more of a specific, a measurable, agreed to, realistic, and time-bounded kind of product requirement than saying it should be just user-friendly. So that's an example of what we mean when we talk about well-defined requirements. Questions to ask when we're doing product requirements. We need to ask the questions of the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how. And by using the SMART model, by asking those questions and finding the answers to these, this supports the actual SMART model. And the SMART model will basically give us clearer, more precise, more measurable product requirements so that we can actually deliver those particular things and be measured towards those product requirements so that we can actually prove that we delivered what we said we're going to deliver.